All right, now that we've fit and adjusted the mortise and tenon sides and shelves, and we have cut the foot blanks, let's measure and cut and glue up our tabletop. Now, when selecting what's going to become your tabletop, look for an interesting grain pattern. What we have here also down at this end, and I'm not going to include this, is a line where we have some darkened, sun-stained, and then some nice light. And this has some shadows that I think are interesting, and we'll include those guys. Now, the thing to keep in mind is when we cut this here, this piece is going to then slide side by side with this guy. So we're not getting bookends. What we're going to get is this grain is going to continue off and then continue off again, and we'll have to decide what is a good pattern that we want to have when we glue this up. So we're going to measure 24 inches from one end, give ourselves a little break, 1 inch break, just like we did before, and then another 24 inches. Now, when measuring our 24 inches with a tape measure, we want to do along one edge so that we can get the length and not accidentally get the diagonal. If we're going to go in the middle, we go like that, we might accidentally have a slight diagonal, which would mean that the actual length of our board is going to be less than 24 inches because we're measuring along the diagonal. So if we measure along the one edge here, we're going to get much closer to a true 24 inches. And we're going to want 24 inches plus an eighth, 2 little nicks there, and then we're going to take this guy and pencil on the mark, adjust our squares so that it doesn't go wonky on the fence since I'm measuring here at the chop saw. You can do this at your table. So pencil on the mark, slide over, and then go square, and then we'll do the same thing with the other one to make sure that we have more precise measurement. We don't want to waste too much wood here. And then we're going to make sure that we cut to the right with our miter set to 0, and we can adjust here. All right, so we're right on the edge of that. And make sure that we have our safety goggles on. All right, so 4. All right, that's one board. Now we can measure the second board either by doing finger flush like we have before. So you get this guy flush with your fingers and come around. Ooh, first try. All right. So we have this guy set up, and it's just shaving the edge off here. So we want to move that to the side. Only cut one board at a time. And cut our second board. Toss our extra guy to the side. Make sure these two guys are exactly the same length, that they are finger flush. And then we're ready to start checking out how they will look when they are put side by side, and we'll do that over on our bar clamps that we have set up for gluing. All right, over on our table we have our paper set down. We have our 2 bar clamps so that we can put our boards directly on them, and we have extra clamps for the middle and then the ends to make sure that the up and down are aligned, as well as squeezing across evenly in multiple places. You can never have too many clamps. So we're going to start by selecting what is the best fit in the middle there, and checking our edges for any sort of tear out that would not create a good fit. So looking along the edge, we want to see nice square, and make sure there are no chips or divots or wane. We look at this guy, and there's a little nick here, but then on the other side we've got that thing, and now we're going to round over at the very end. So the outside, that's okay, but we don't want that in the middle. So we're going to have that guy on the outside. We're going to set these guys, line them up, and we're going to bring these closer. And then we can turn them up and spray glue on the edges. Coverage, I'll do on both, so strictly not necessary. Alright, slide them back and forth against each other, and you can start to see the squeeze out there. And we'll align the two edges, and then evenly. Oh no, it shifted on me because my knuckles were too close to the table. Alright, let's pull this out so my knuckles don't hit the table, and realign these guys. And we also want to make sure that the up and the down are agreed with each other, so we can wipe off that extra. Now we're going to send this through the planer anyway. So this guy, especially because if you do, you're liable to warp your top, and you don't want that. You want it flat. So you want enough pressure to press the edges together, but not so much that the wood starts warping. All right, now we have this set up, and it needs to sit there long enough to dry and cure. All right, the glue on our tabletop has dried up, and we have some blotchiness here at the seam that we'd like to clean up, as well as a couple of dark spots from the clamps where I didn't protect them with paper. So we're over here at the thickness planer to get rid of those guys a little bit faster than it would take by sanding, and also to get rid of this little ridge here that appeared in the middle. I got rid of the one at the end, but the one in the middle is still there. So we have moved the dust collection hose over from the bandsaw to this. We plugged this in. The gate is open for dust collection, and this board is 3/4 inch thick, so we come over here to the gauge and set it to 3/4 of an inch plus a smidge because of the mismatch, so the actual thickness is going to be a little bit more than 3/4 of an inch. And we're going to feed this guy through a couple of times on this side, and then a couple of times on that side, because we have a matching smear of glue. And we're going to start by turning. So this guy turns, and there's an arrow on there. It turns to release that guy, and then we can turn this on, but not until we have turned on the dust collection that we have hooked up. can see the first side, that was a very heavy pass. It was very loud, and it took off everything that we needed to take off. The second pass, where I didn't change the thickness at all, it was a much lighter pass, and we're going to need to do that again because we still have these guys. So. Having passed this through the planer several times, we now have the glue gone from both the top and the bottom of our tabletop. So we have a nice clean seam here, and unfortunately we're going to have some sanding still to do. Always going to have lots of sanding. If you can see along here, there are some ridges from where the rollers pressed onto the wood to pull it through. So we're going to have to sand this down to get those ridges out. Now the process of planing this, we ended up taking off about 3/32 of an inch worth of material. So our tabletop is going to be thinner than the sides and the shelves, but that's okay. And what we're going to do next with it is dry fit our frame together and invert it on the workbench with the tabletop on the workbench so we can line up the tenons and do some careful measurements to make sure that the distance in from the ends and the distance in from the sides is symmetrical before we mark off the mortises, and then we're going to mortise the top to have the leg tenons go through them.